We're a week from Election Day, and what's a pretty consequential election, I think we'd all agree. And so we decided to get our team together to make our picks for what we think are going to happen in the biggest races throughout the state of Illinois. As always, we get people watching these episodes, these special episodes, who don't necessarily watch our weekly stuff. So let me give you a couple quick things of how this works. Number one, our producer and our team put a lot of work into giving you time codes so you can jump to a race you care particularly more about. And so if you scroll down in the video, look at the description, you'll see there's time codes there. Feel free to jump around to a race you care about. We'd love to have you watch the whole thing. We think it's pretty good content, but maybe you don't want to sit there for that period of time. So feel free to use those time codes to look for something that you really care about. Next, we do a weekly podcast called The Smoke-Filled Room. It is the only weekly podcast in the state of Illinois that talks about politics and the news and campaigns from an insider's perspective, from a center-right perspective. Every week we have conservatives, we have Republicans, we've got experts who give their thoughts on what's going on. We'd love it if you'd subscribe and stick with us, because every week we're giving you stuff you get nowhere else. On every single one of those episodes, you get Core Strategies political experts. You get Michael, you get Chris. They're on all those episodes except for the once or twice we let them take a day off from work, which pretty much rarely ever happens.
Never, in fact.
Yeah, pretty much. So Illinois Labor's Board is going to come after us. But we're glad to have them here with us today. So, fellas, glad you're here.
Oh, yeah, good to be here and looking forward to this.
I'm Collin Corbett. I'm the host of Smoke-Filled Room and the owner of Core Strategies. I'm going to be your tour guide, your bus guide as we go through this today, and I'm going to make some picks on my own because I can't help myself. On this special episode, because we're going to be making predictions and picks and giving you information, we needed our very own Vanna White. And so I decided to reach out and ask my beautiful wife to be our Vanna White. She doesn't even have a microphone, so you can speak as much as you want, but nobody's going to hear you. If Michael's nice, maybe he'll pass it to you if you've got some thoughts. But she's going to be writing on the boards behind us as we make our picks. So you'll see my lovely, wonderful wife as she goes and helps us out here in the video. We're going to get right into it and start talking about these races. What we're going to do is we're going to talk through the races one by one. There are 17 big races in the state. Now, no matter where, depending on where you live, you'll have other races that you care about. But if you're thinking from a statewide perspective, there are really 17 key races on the ballot for Republicans this November. So we're going to talk through each of those one by one. Then we're going to have some fun, make some picks, make some lock picks, some overachievers, some underachievers, some surprise picks. We're going to have some fun with it. But first, we want to go through each race and give you an idea of what's happening. I'm going to assume that you've watched videos we've done before. Our producer will put in the comments section or in the description links to some of the videos that we've done before that give you a preview of which races are going to matter. If we're talking through these races and it doesn't make a lot of sense, pause this video, go back to one of those other ones, because I don't want to spend 10 minutes per race giving you the basics of what has happened in the last 12 to 18 months. We're going to go right at where's the race right now, who's going to win, what are the numbers looking like. That's how we're going to approach this. So if you don't know what's happening in each race, poke back in our archives or look in the comment section. We've got some links for you to catch up on some of these races. For us, we're going to go right to the analysis. You guys ready?
Absolutely. Let's
Ready
get
as I'll
after
ever
it.
be.
All right, let's start with House District 114. This is Keeven Schmidt, the Republican running for re-election. It is the #1 hold race for Republicans, the toughest hold race for Republicans. Where do we see that race right now? Who do you think is going to win it? I've got what ends up being Eeyore and Piglet. You've got, and I'm Tigger in the middle, so it works out pretty well. So most of the time, not every time, most of the time, Chris will likely have the more pessimistic view of how Republicans are going to do. Michael, our eternal optimist, will often have the more optimistic view. We'll see how this plays out. Abby will write it on the board as we go. Michael, we'll start with you on this race. 114, I know it's important to you. How do you think this race is going to play out? What's our ceiling? What's the best we could possibly do here?
Yeah, this is a rematch of the previous election. So Keeven Schmidt flipped this seat 2 years ago. He's running for re-election against LaToya Greenwood, which is who he beat last time. We've seen a really strong field game from Keeven Schmidt, not as strong of a field game for LaToya Greenwood. And we've got a lot of outside groups that have come in and are doing work. We're seeing great numbers on early vote and vote by mail, about 13, 14-point improvement from last cycle for the Republicans. So I think we've got a really good shot of holding this seat. And it's been, the talk of the town, the talk of the state, all of this cycle for those reasons.
What do you think? So where do you think the number's going to come in? Here's your moment of truth.
My guess, I would say 52-48, Keeven Schmidt.
So +4 for Republicans.
Yeah.
That's our ceiling. That's what you think. That's where our optimist feels. I wouldn't write it just yet. Let's hear what our pessimist thinks about this race.
Well, here's the thing about Kevin Schmidt. Kevin Schmidt's a phenomenal representative, serves his constituency well. The issue with Kevin Schmidt is that the general consensus is that Kevin Schmidt kind of lucked his way into this seat because the Democrats did not take it very seriously in 2022. They did not believe it was at risk, and Kevin kind of came from behind without a lot of backing from the establishment Republican Party in the state and ended up winning the race by a pretty decent margin in 2022. Democrats are confident that they're going to be able to increase the black turnout in the western part of that district, the East St. Louis, Cahokia area, that wasn't there in 2022. The numbers coming in right now show that there is possibility of a very significant Democratic turnout increase in 2024 in this district. How many of those voters still live there? That's the big question. Right now, I think this is a race that's going to come down to a very few number of votes just because of how much the local Republican Party, like Michael, is putting into the race and how much local Democratic Party is putting into the race. I consider this race a true toss-up. It might go down to vote by mail, so that means Butler has to show up to work the day after Election Day. I'm sorry. I had to do it in 2022. You're going to have to do it in 2024 here, my friend. I think it's going to be very close. I think the slight favorite is LaToya Greenwood just because of the maps. But if Schmidt can keep Eastern turnout up while keeping Western turnout low, he does have a shot. But right now, I do think LaToya is a very, very, very slight favorite.
So you're in this race. Seems like you're more a pessimist here. So what's our floor? What's the worst maybe that Schmidt might perform here? If you're saying LaToya Greenwood might pull this off, what are you thinking? Minus what?
-1.5
Minus
floor
two?
to -2
Full
for an
round of two?
absolute
All right,
floor.
so +4 to -2 is our range here on the Kevin Schmidt race. You got that?
Okay.
+4 to -2. I think this is pretty good. You guys have analyzed this pretty well. You know, Trump lost that district by 7 last time. Schmidt won it by 6, to your point. The district is incredibly swingy. You know, Republicans have done as badly as -14 in that district. I think that was Ronner who did really badly in that district. It's a D+3 officially. So I think you guys have got a pretty good range there. I'd say it's, I kind of fall in the middle as I would usually say, but I think Michael's going to be there for a long time. I think it's going to be less than 1 point. I think Schmidt's going to pull it off. I'm with you. But I think it's going to be under 1 point. It's going to be 100, 200 votes at most. And this thing's going to drag on for a few weeks. And while we're all having fun on Thanksgiving, poor Michael's sitting there counting votes at the county clerk's office. But we'll see how this plays out. All right, let's go to our next race here. This is House District 104. Brandun Schweizer is the incumbent, running for the first time because he was appointed, facing Jarrett Clem in that district. This is yet again a Republican hold effort, but now it's a hold in what is essentially an open seat. A lot of people have pointed to this race as one of the top 2 or 3 that might flip for Democrats. Again, here, let's start with you. Actually, no, you started last time. Chris, we'll start with you. We'll see where you fall in this race. Schweizer versus Clem in House District 104. Where are you at?
Well, the interesting thing about this district is the Democrats really pulled out, didn't have to spend a lot of their own money on this race because they picked a really, really solid candidate in Jarrett Clem, who's a local union guy, blue collar, really fits the district very well. Brandun Schweizer has been a phenomenal representative for the Republicans, and he's been working this district very hard. It's one of those districts where, really, in terms of candidate quality, both the Republicans and Democrats have pretty solid candidates. The issue right now is coming down to Marin was able to hold, the former Representative Marin was able to hold the seat very long because of incumbency, and they were able to give Schweizer the incumbency after Marin resigned, and the local Republican committees were able to appoint him. Is that going to be enough, only having about 6 months on the job going into Election Day? I'm not really sure. Democrats are working this race very hard. Organized labor is working this race very hard. It's a district that has rural areas and it has some suburban areas around Champaign. It's going to be very difficult for Schweizer to hold on to. My opinion is that if you want a floor for this race, I'm thinking at the lowest this could go, probably D+4, R-4. That's kind of the floor for Republicans going into this race. Another very close race, but I think it could stretch out a little bit more.
And where do you kind of fit in that? If you think the floor is -4, where do you think roughly it's probably going to end up?
2,
Okay.
-2 probably. If Schweizer wins, in theory, Schweizer can win by up to 2, I think. But right now, again, the eternal pessimist in me says it's looking at probably about D-2 right now.
Okay. Michael, what do you think?
I agree with Chris on this. I think that is a pretty accurate representation of what's going to happen. I think that my gut is that Schweizer will win, but I think it's going to be the tightest race in the state. I was looking at some of the early voting numbers. Republicans, when you look at the modeling and on who showed up so far, Republicans are about 40.2%, which is of the swing districts that I've looked at across the state, on that early voting data. That's the strongest performance for Republicans in a swing district. So that's a good sign for Schweizer. They've knocked an insane amount of doors, and like we talked about, I think it was last week maybe, they have had a good, strong response to some of these attacks that the Democrats have put out. And I think one of the things that the Democrats are kind of struggling with in that district is they're trying to portray Clem as a moderate, and he's a different kind of Democrat and things of that nature. But then you see the attacks that they're lobbying against Schweizer, and it's very abortion. And how can you have it both ways where you're saying, oh, Schweizer is going to be pro-choice and he's going to, toe the Democrat line on that issue.
You mean Clem's going to be
Clem? Yeah, Clem is. And then say, that he's a different kind of Democrat. Well, that doesn't sound like a different kind of Democrat to me.
Question is, will voters make that connection? But that's a decent point. What do you think is the ceiling here? What do you think is the best that Schweizer can do?
I think probably R+2.
Okay, so we're thinking +2. Looking at the numbers, I'd say more like +3. I'm gonna bump that up a little bit.
Right.
So let's say +3 to -4 is our range on this one, which is interesting because based on the underlying numbers, this district is more favorable for Republicans, but you guys are saying actually in this election it might be less favorable than the Schmidt race. So already some interesting feedback here. Trump lost that district by only 4. So he did 3 points better in this district than he did even in Kevin Schmidt's district. As you said, Marin won it by 8 and did pretty well. It's an R4 district according to some of our baseline data that we've done internally. It's interesting where you guys have it. I'm a little more favorable to this race, but I'm going to hold on to my thoughts on this race until we get to our picks. A little bit of a preview because I got strong feelings about this race. I think Republicans are going to do well. I think Schweizer's going to do well. I think he'll overperform what you guys are saying, but we're going to see. We said +3 -4. Vanna White, she's new to the job. We got to give her a little help as she goes. All right, let's keep moving. House District 47, yet another situation where we're talking about an incumbent Republican trying to hold on to their seat. This is Amy Grant in 47. Jackie Williamson is challenging her for the second time. Many people, at least we had this as our third toughest hold. A lot of people had it as their first toughest hold for Republicans. It's kind of bounced around in the top 3 or 4 from everybody's rankings, but it being a suburban district, it being a DuPage County district, a lot of people are pretty nervous about this race. We'll start with the optimist here. Michael, what are your thoughts on 47?
I mean, I'm pretty nervous about this one. I mean, I don't have as much context as you guys do, probably just because of how far removed I am from this district, with it being in DuPage County. But I think this one's going to be very tight. But also, I mean, we've talked about it in previous podcasts that Grant always outperforms expectations. So she always kind of finds a way to get it done when everybody thinks that she won't. So
if you're going to put our ceiling on this race, it's probably not going to be much over break even, but what do you think? What's her ceiling? How much, if everything goes well, how much does Grant win by?
I think 1.5.
So let's round it to 2 maybe?
2, sure.
Okay. What are you thinking on the pessimistic side? I know you've been saying she's toast for a bit, haven't you?
Yeah, is there even a floor in this race? How low can we go here?
I don't even want to see Chris do the limbo.
Yeah, I'm more flexible than you think I am, Collin. Don't worry. Look. This is another race where I will have some very strong thoughts on it in a little bit here. Floor, honestly, minus like 8, 9, 10. Like that's where I see like the absolute bottoming out of this district being with Trump on the ballot, and a number of other factors. I think you can bottom out here at like -8 or 9.
All right, as you said, Trump lost this district by 12. It's why many people are nervous about it. It's in an area where Trump plays poorly. But keep in mind, guys, at the local level, Republicans do very well. Republicans win by 9 in the confines of this district at the local level. It's not deep blue. It's just very anti-Trump, and I think everyone seems to miss that. But that said, even if you're looking at this in the most favorable way, Amy Grant won it by 6 last time, and that was with Democrats not spending a lot of money against her. So let's put it at +2 at the high, -9 at the low. That'll be our range. So +2 to -9. It's a massive range.
Anything can happen.
I'm not as pessimistic on you guys as you guys on this race, to be honest. I think Amy squeaks this one out. I'll be honest, but I could see it going very badly, especially because Republicans just seem to have abandoned the race. If we hold on to the seat, it's not because we did ourselves any favors, and I think you could probably read the tea leaves. I think Republicans not investing in this race. I haven't seen the polling that they're looking at, but you wouldn't skip this race if you didn't see pretty bad polling. So more than likely, I'm wrong. Chris is right. We'll see what happens on election day.
Can we clip that?
I gave the caveat of more than likely. All right, let's go to House District District 52. This one's pretty important to a lot of us just because it's right down the street. Marty McLaughlin's a friend. He's a good friend of Abby's. Doesn't like me as much, but he does like Abby, which is fine. But 52, Marty McLaughlin's trying to hold on to that seat. It is Maria Peterson running against him. A ton of money has been spent. A ton of money, like $1 million plus, has been spent on the Democratic side. Like 15 cents has been spent on the Republican side. It's very frustrating. Who kicked us off on the last one? It was Chris is up first on this one, right?
Right.
Go ahead.
So this is another one where you could argue about how low your floor can go just because Marty's not doing anything. The Democrats are doing everything. Like, again, this isn't necessarily my personal pick. You want me to tell you the floor. The floor is similar to Amy Grant's sister. I could see this being -9, even -10 after all things are considered. Is that going to be the case? I don't think so. But if we do think spending matters in politics, and like that we think that district is as far gone as it may be, we'll be a little bit more optimistic. We'll call it -8, -7, something like that. That's where I think this race is going to bottom out at. But is that actually going to happen? Stay tuned.
What do you think?
I have a really bold prediction on this
All
one
right.
later.
All right,
so
we'll hold on it. We'll hold on it. All right, where's our ceiling on this race?
I think it could be as much as 3 points, maybe somewhere in that range. I would say it's probably a 5-point swing from like low end to high end, but I think that at the end of the day, Marty pulls it off.
Okay, so what do you think? What's the ceiling?
R+3.
Talk into the mic. buddy.
R+3.
All right, so we got, 8 for you then?
7.
7? All right, so +3 to -7 is going to be our range in this race. So again, if you're an odds maker and you're looking at these numbers, you're saying the odds are more on the Democratic side with most of these races. You're saying 3 out of the 4, basically, odds are more on the Democratic side, which is what many people are saying, that Democrats are going to pick up 2 or 3, maybe 4 seats. The numbers, the ranges that we're putting are pretty in line with what people are saying. Here's what I think everyone needs to remember about this district is that locally it's extremely Republican. This is an R+11 district. If you look at the local races, the county races, it's Trump that kills us. He loses by 6, and that's the whole reason why the whole average gets dragged down. Marty also tends to underperform other candidates in the region. He only won by 5 last time, and so he does tend to underperform a little bit. He's not running the greatest of races this time, so he'll likely underperform again. And so where is he going to fall in that range? I don't think it's going to be in the -7 to -10 range, but I do think this one's, especially because the way that some of these counties count their votes, like Lake County drops their vote by mail ballots in at the very end. I think this could be one of those that just bounces back and forth over that 0 pretty much not only all night, but the next couple days as you see vote by mail ballots come in. So this one's going to be razor thin. Obviously, personally, I really want Marty to pull it off. I know my wife does as well. So we're crossing our fingers, hoping our guy wins this one. But it's certainly a scary race, and the numbers are they're getting tough. They're getting rough. All right, let's keep going along. Let's stop talking about holds. Let's talk about pickups. House District 45, the number one, at least based on the numbers, potential pickup opportunities for Republicans. This is Dennis Reboletti, who is running in what's essentially, or is, an open seat against Marty Dueter. Reboletti is a well-known commodity in that area, running to try to pick up this seat for Republicans. It's held by Democrats at the moment. What do you think? I'll start with you.
I think, Dennis has been a state rep before. He's got name ID. He works hard. He kind of has a unique way of doing things, and I think that I think this is definitely a pickup opportunity and something that we
you seem to be holding back. What are you holding back on this here?
I don't know. Some of these I don't know as much.
That's all it is? All
Yeah.
right. What do you think's the ceiling here? Or do you want me to help you set what the ceiling might be on this one?
You do it.
All right. He's just passing here. And Mizaki won it by less than 1%, or lost it by less than 1%.
Yeah.
And it was on a razor wire. It is R3 at the local level, but Trump lost this district by 17 points. That's the killer here. DuPage County just hates Trump, and it's what really hurts us in a lot of these districts. I think you're putting a ceiling. If they do pull this off, which I'll give kudos to that team. They've been working their butts off. If they pull us off, it'll be by 1 or 2 points. It's not going to be by any more than that. So let's set the ceiling at maybe +2 on this one. What do you guys think? What's our floor?
Yeah, 2. 2 as a ceiling, I think, is fairly accurate. As a floor, Republicans always, no matter what the district, no matter how much money is spent on one side or the other, for whatever reason, this area of DuPage County, Republicans are always going to overperform. So it will not be Reboletti losing by 17 points. Reboletti could do nothing, and he would not lose this district by 17 points. In reality, I would say the floor is probably closer to like R6. in this
D6?
type, D6 in this type of district, just because it's an open seat. The money, while not even, the House Republicans are spending money in this district. They have picked up their game in recent months. I would say probably if Reboletti loses, his floor is probably D6.
All right, so we're going to say -6 is our floor in House District 45. So the odds makers would say it's leaning towards Democrats in that race, but what do you think? I mean, Michael's kind of a little wishy-washy over here. See, he doesn't like talking DuPage politics because I think he's afraid of our friends in DuPage. I think he's afraid of Abby Oliver whacking him upside the head. You don't seem to care about that, so do you want to tick some people off, or what do you think?
I'll tick some people off. Look, if Reboletti loses, I'm not going to blame Reboletti. I'm not going to blame his campaign team. I think the blame is basically just on this area of DuPage County, and DuPage County itself is just so far gone at this point, and there hasn't been enough Republican investment into this area that's why Reboletti's if Reboletti loses, that's why he's going to lose.
You think the odds are that he's coming in the underdog?
Yeah, I think definitely odds are coming in the underdog. I mean, this is a Biden plus 17 district. You can't walk into a Biden 17 district and call yourself the favorite. I don't think anybody at the House Republicans would say Dennis Reboletti is the favorite in this district. Doesn't mean Reboletti can't win. It just means he's just not. He's not at minus money right now. There's no juice on him right now. There's plus money on him right now.
Yeah, I just say, listen, if we only lost it by less than a point, what was it, 0.8% that we lost that race by? And Trump is doing better right now.
It's DuPage County, Collin. There is no Trump doing better.
I understand, but I think Trump's going to do even 3 points, 4 points better in DuPage County than he did last time. I just hear lots of people making excuses already. And you look at the math, the data. The data tells us we should be winning this race. Like you, I'm not going to throw blame on anybody, but we absolutely should be winning this race. And so while I hear you guys, and the odds certainly are not in our favor in that race, this is one of our best pickup opportunities, if not our best. We ought to be winning this race. Let's go to the next one. House District 112. Have to start with Michael on this, whether it's your time to start or not. This is Katie Stuart, who many people have been trying to knock off for a while. Yeah. She doesn't fit that district. She's certainly not well liked in that region, and Michael and many others have been wanting to knock her off for a long time. They've got Jay Keeven in that race, who was appointed, so he didn't have the primary. He doesn't have slated. Doesn't have as long of a campaign as many others, but he's been working hard. I know you and many others have been working hard.
Yeah.
What are we looking at in that district?
I think if Jay Keeven pulls this off, I actually think that one of the major factors is the fact that the Democrats filed this bill, last minute to prohibit slating, because that really coalesced a lot of people behind Keeven. It motivated them. They saw that as evidence that the Democrats are worried about this race, and it was all hands on deck from that moment on. I know we've made about 30,000 voter contacts in this district between door knocking and phone banking, which is probably one of the highest contact numbers in the state. And as we have gotten deeper into this cycle, a lot of PACs and HRO have really warmed up to this one as an opportunity. And Katie got a really late start. I mean, we talked about it, months ago, early August. She announced, hey, we're going to start knocking doors now.
She hasn't run a stellar campaign, that's for sure.
No, she definitely hasn't. And they're doing that copy-paste stuff like they are all over the state. So I think this is kind of like a sleeper pick, especially if you go back, 4 or 5 months, to August, or I guess it wasn't even 3 months to August. This race wasn't really on a lot of people's radars, but I think it's on a lot of people's radars now. There's a lot of excitement, and the early vote numbers bear that out. I mean, we've got basically double the early votes percentage-wise compared to 2 years ago, about 2 points higher on the share of early votes compared to 4 years ago. And this has always been a tight race, and it's gone back and forth between Republicans and Democrats over the course of the last 15 years.
So where do you think the ceiling is, and where do you think this one might end up?
I think the ceiling is probably an R+2. Okay. I think the floor is probably a D+3.
Okay. All right, that's your range. What do you think? You think this is going to happen? You think you're going to get? I know we got our picks later, but what do you think?
I think there's a good shot this happens.
Okay.
I mean, look, I tend to agree with Butler a little bit here. I think that, honestly, the floor for this particular district isn't as low as other districts. Even if this district isn't going to be one where Republicans have a better chance of picking it off, I think that the margin between where the Democrats' top performances and the Republicans' top performance, that gap isn't very high in this district. I would put the floor probably at, I don't know, D+3, R-3, something like that. Okay. Because I do think Katie Stewart's ran a particularly poor campaign. I do think Jay Keeven's a good candidate. And I do think that Michael has worked his butt off. I do think there are some poor factors in there. It doesn't seem like HRO is going all out for this one for whatever reason after, basically making, Keeven their number one priority during the slating process. And they're also backing off on the race right now, which makes no sense to me at all. But in any case, Keeven can win. If he loses, it's going to be pretty close. Because there's not a lot of investment from the caucus right now, I do think that Stuart is a slight favorite. Keeven is a slated candidate, and he did get some press off the slating bill itself. But being a slated candidate is a disadvantage, even if only a slight one. I do think Katie Stewart could eke this one out. Yes.
Okay. One other thing, because this is unique to this district compared to all the other ones that we're talking about. There are no countywide candidates. Countywide Democrat candidates on the ballot in Madison County. The only candidates they have on the ballot are, other than Katie Stewart, are county board candidates. Those county board candidates on the Democratic side have not been working particularly hard. So I think that's a factor too in this race that's unique compared to some of these others.
Well,
it's going to impact turnout.
Trump doesn't kill us here. I mean, he only lost it by 6. It's a break-even district. Katie Stewart won by 8. So she does slightly overperform at least that metric, the top of her ticket. So, I mean, you could certainly say, there's not it's a tighter range, I think, to that point, is that when Trump doesn't kill it. I'd say +2 would be the top here, based on what Michael's saying. On the bottom, I'd go a little bit, give it a little more of a floor, or a little less of a floor, if you will. I'd say -5 would be the floor here. Even though I know it's a little lower than what you said, just because it definitely could get lower in this race. So we'll keep an eye on it. I think odds makers would say the odds are that we get close, but maybe don't pull it off. But Michael, locally, a lot of people have been working hard. This is definitely one to watch. Let's go to House District 51. By the numbers, this is our next best potential pickup opportunity for Republicans. But I say by the numbers because the factors, which I'm sure you'll hear from Chris and Michael, change that dramatically. This is Nabeela Syed. She's the incumbent in House District 51. Tosi Ufodike is trying to pick that up. Let's start with Chris because I know you're ready to jump in on what those other factors are.
So Tosi Ufodike had a lot of hype going into this election from the House Republicans, from the local Republicans. And this district itself, local Republicans think that this is a district that's ours. Palatine's a Republican town. We need a Republican representative. There's no way we can't lose. There's no way we can lose to Nabeela Syed again. And
Barrington and Lake Zurich.
And all these areas are Republican areas, guys. Please trust me. Do not look at the underlying numbers of where these districts had voted in the last 5 to 10 years. Do not look at those numbers. I promise you that all the Northern Cook County is ripe Republican territory. So we have a lot of hype, and usually for state rep races, there's overperformances. That that local voters in this area, they'll vote for Biden, they'll vote for Pritzker, but they'll vote for their local Republican because they're secretly they hate taxes just like the rest of the upper middle class. And then nobody did anything for Tosi. They're doing nothing for Tosi. There was all these promises made. There was commitments that we're going to do X, Y, and Z for Tosi, and none of it happened. None of it. So basically, listen, if you put all your money into Tosi Ufodike, let's say they gave her the money that they're putting into some of these other races that we're going to talk about, she'd have a better chance to at least get close. I think there's a lot of factors like Trump being on a ticket that's going to hurt her. I don't see a scenario where we're winning it this cycle. Maybe if she comes back around 2026 and actually gets some help from the caucus, gets some help from other people, that there's a chance that she can win this race. Bottoming out, 8, I'd say.
Nabeela won by 7 last time.
Okay, we'll call it 10 then. I
think it's even worse?
I should have double checked. Well, now Nabeela's the incumbent, Collin.
Yeah, fair.
She's the incumbent, Collin, and why am I forgetting his name? Who is the former Boss? Yes, Boss. Boss had a little bit of money behind him. They did some things for Boss. They're not really, and Tosi's doing her own things, which I got to give her credit for. Not a lot of non-HRO helped candidates actually go out there and do their own things and do their own fundraising, which I'll give her credit for. But is it enough as Nabeela's war chest and the Abdel Nasser Rashid money? No, it's not. And just to be completely honest. So
you're saying the floor is -10?
Yeah, the floor is -10.
All right, Michael, I don't know if you have too many thoughts on this race, but what do you think?
I think that it's just kind of been disappointing how this one has played out because, like Chris said, there was a lot of hype, especially early on. And I think, there's been some questionable Facebook posts that I think hurt a little bit too. So I would say, the ceiling is probably, D+2 or something. I mean, I just don't think it's happening.
So at this point, we're saying it's the ceiling isn't even above zero.
Yeah.
It's just this race ain't happening. Which I think based on the spend, based on where everything's at in this race, Tosi not getting the help that she needed, it's really hard to be honest with you all as our viewers and say that that the ceiling is a +0, +1, +2. I mean, maybe Tosi shocks the world and that would be amazing. But I think the numbers, I think you're probably not far off. So let's say -2 is your ceiling, -10 is your floor in that race. Here's the thing though. Chris wanted to make a point that everyone locally says, oh, this is a Republican district, this is a Republican district. They're actually not wrong. Trump loses this district by 13, but locally Republicans win it by 6. That tells you just how that swing is, that locally Chris is right. These are middle-class voters, in some cases upper middle-class voters who hate taxes, who want fiscal responsibility, but also who hate Trump. And that's the thing that might hurt a Tosi Ufodike is in a Republican district, Nabeela has all the money, Tosi hasn't gotten the support, Trump is going to drag her down. It's going to make it tough to pull that off. But the plea is, please, I did that right, run again, Tosi, in a district where Trump's not, or a year that Trump is not at the top of the ticket, because then this whole ball game may be completely different. All right, let's go to the next race. House District 76. Lance Yednock was the Democrat representative, or is at the moment. He is not running for re-election. So you have an open district. The Republican is Liz Bishop. The Democrat in that race is Briel, or Amy Briel. Everyone's been talking about this race a lot, though the last month it seems to have quieted down. I'll start with you, Michael. What do you think about 76?
I think that, Lance Yednock, to his credit, was kind of a different kind of Democrat, and he fit that district well. So like him, opting not to run again created an opportunity for us. And I know that Liz Bishop and her campaign have been working very hard. So I think there's a possibility here, but at the end of the day, probably not going to pick this one up.
So what do you think is the ceiling? I think the ceiling is at least, there's a lot of people who think this could be sneaky. I think the ceiling has to be at least break even or a hair above break even.
Yeah, I would say a hair above break even, maybe like half a point, 1 point, somewhere in that range. I mean, it's going to be if she pulls it off, it's going to be very tight.
Yeah. So we'll say +1 to give it space there.
Yeah.
Knowing that it's going to be tough to pull it off. Chris, what do you think?
Look, there's a half of this district that is trending Republican. Those river towns in the South that are a part of like the little handle that goes up to the Northern Illinois University and DeKalb. So there's areas of this district that are trending Republican, and because it's an open seat, I think this could get close. And for whatever reason, the House Republicans think this is like an absurdly good pickup opportunity. So they're spending a lot of money here. I put the floor, because of the money spent, because of the open seat, I put the floor maybe at 6. When it could be higher. If Yednock was still there, we wouldn't even be talking about this district, certainly. Floor will put it at 7. Floor will put it at 7 because I do...
Trump lost that district by 8, but Yednock, to your point, was a rock star there. He won it by 15. Right. But he's not on the ballot, right?
And I think Trump's going to do better there this year, just because of those river towns, those working class areas in LaSalle County. I do think this is a district that might trend towards Republicans, and that's why I'm not putting the floor as low. I don't think we're going to win this district, as I'll go into further detail later, but I do think the idea is there. Like the idea of like this type of district being in play for Republicans in there, should they have put this much money into it? No, they shouldn't have, but the idea and the underlying math of like these working class union towns along the river, yes, they're trending Republican. Yes, you should invest money into them. I don't know if you should have invested this much, and I don't think Liz Bishop's going to win.
Okay, so we've got +1 as the ceiling, and then -7 would be the floor. Sounds like that's where we're settling in. I think that Republicans in that district have made it a race, and so we'll have to see where this plays out. I'm going to be talking about this race in a little bit, so I'm going to just stick for my thoughts till later so that you guys don't try to steal it, because we got a competition coming up later. All right, let's go up to the next one here. House District 97, if I didn't just screw up my order. Yes, I didn't. Okay. This is Harry Benton, the incumbent. Republicans are trying to pick this up. We've got in that race Gabby Shanahan, a candidate that many Republicans are very excited about. Chris, start us off in this race, because I know you talked this race up like 6-9 months ago, so you've been high on this race for a long time.
I have been high on this race for a long time, and the HRO has put significant resources into it, so the Republicans actually do have a chance of winning this race. Gabby Shanahan's an up-and-coming star in the Republican Party. If she loses this race, God forbid, please run again in 2026, because you will have a chance to win it at that point, I believe, if you can't do it this time. I think this is a district Republicans can pick up. You want a floor. My floor is probably D+4. -4 for Republicans, just because Benton's an incumbent. You know, he does have working class aesthetics. He is the first new kind of Democrat that the House Dems have put out there in recent cycles. So yes, Republicans could lose this race by up to 4. I don't think that's going to happen, for the record. I think it's if they lose it, it'll be closer, and they do think they can win. But you want a floor. The floor is -4.
Okay. What do you think?
I think that I agree. I think that there's a real shot here. I think that Gabby's been a good candidate. They put the resources behind her in this race, which obviously is important. And I think that Harry Benton has made some missteps, and we've talked about that, kind of the hypocrite Harry, where he says one thing and does another. And they've done a relatively good job of getting that message out there, through the media and through some of their mail and things like that. So I think if I had to give it a number on the high end, I would say R+2.
Okay. I like your high. I think your high is pretty good in this race. I would actually lower the floor. I expected this was going to happen because Chris has been hyping this race up so much. You said the floor was what, 4?
Yeah, D+4, R-4.
So I'm looking at Harry Benton won it by 3 last time against a good opponent. Trump lost his district by 10. And so I think you got to drop that floor just a little bit. I'll be optimistic, but I'm going to drop it a point or two here. So let's say the floor is -5. The ceiling is +2. So +2 to -5 on this race. I think we're going to be questioning, the investment in the race at the end of it. I think, like you said, Gabby's awesome, so I understand why they've invested in her. And maybe it's more of a long-term play than a short-term play. I'm not sure we're going to pull the race off, but we'll be making our picks in a little bit, so we'll see how that goes. Let's move to 91. This is Sharon Chung, the incumbent. Desi Anderson is the Republican running against her. Again, another opportunity for Republicans to potentially pick up a seat. Chris started us off last time, so why don't you kick us off here? What do you think about this race?
I think that Desi's a great candidate. They've been working hard. They put some resources behind this one as well. I think it is a pickup opportunity, but I think it is going to be extremely tight if we do pick it up.
Do you think the ceiling is above 0 on this one? Do you think there is a chance we pick it up?
Yeah.
House Republicans have left the race. They've abandoned it. They're done spending. They wouldn't do that if there's a chance of winning.
Sure. Well, that's
but
fair.
You're an optimist. That's fine.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll say even is the ceiling. What do you think? Like
even,
if she wins, if Desi Anderson wins, it'll be like 3.5 votes, and there's a hanging Chad situation, and we get lucky and pull it off.
Sure. And then I think you look at her opponent, Sharon Chung, and she's kind of a goofball. I mean, she's, especially the last couple of weeks, some of the interviews that she's done where she said, people aren't concerned about inflation or the minimum, business owners aren't concerned about the minimum wage being what it is. Oh, I've never heard that before.
Well, and she does underperform. We talked about Katie Stewart overperforming the top of the ticket. Chung underperforms. Trump lost his district by 8. Chung only won it by 4.5. So to your point, she does tend to underperform, which is why Republicans think there might be an opening here.
Well, look, I hate talking about districts like this because, you talk about how much money that the House Republicans put into this race and how confident they were that this was on the table. And honestly, it really could be, looking at some of the underlying numbers of some of the other statewide Republicans who were able to pull off this race, or at least get very close to this race. But they spent so many months pumping dollar after dollar into this race just to pull out of it at the 11th hour. Now, I understand there's tough decisions that you have to make as a caucus leader and all those sorts of things. I don't know why you spent so much time pumping money in this race just to pull it out of it, to be honest with you. But floor, call it 5. -5 for the floor.
Are you just trying to be optimistic? Is that what you're doing here?
No, because they put so much money into this race. You have to take that into consideration a little bit here. Even if they were just lighting the money on fire, I mean, they did spend it. So I don't think fine. You want a floor, Collin? You want a floor? I'll give you -8. I'll give you -8.
I'll settle at 7. We'll settle at
settle
7.
at 7.
You got talking to the mic, but we'll
Settle at 7.
Yeah. All right. So floor of -7 here. Ceiling is even. So we've changed it up. We're just going to literally just write even. Or write 0, whatever you want to do. You're the boss of the board. Do whatever you think. You're going to write like a hangman, and then actually we're all going to play hangman. It'll be fun. All right. It's a tough district to predict. It is a break-even district locally, but I think there's telling signs. I've seen some data. We've seen some data. Doesn't look good for Republicans. We'll be talking about that race a lot in terms of spent resources post-Election Day. We don't need to do that today. Let's go down to House District 79. This is a district that Democrats have been trying to convince me, and even some Republicans have been trying to convince me for months is in play. This is Jackie Haas, the incumbent. Everyone's saying Harry Benton's a great candidate. He's possibly...
Billy Morgan, not Harry Benton.
Billy Morgan. Billy Morgan's going to pull this off. He's a great candidate. Obviously, I'm already telling you how I feel about the race. That said, I'm going to let our guys talk. What do you think about 79?
Listen, Billy Morgan is a great candidate. And if he loses, I wouldn't be surprised if he turns around and runs again in 2026, just because they are really high on Billy Morgan as a candidate. They are not going to win this race. I don't care what Democrat is putting something in your coffee or what they're telling you. The Democrats are not going to win this race. Can it be closer than anybody is willing to admit on election night? Yes. It doesn't seem like the House Republicans have put a lot of money in this race, and they really shouldn't, to be completely honest with you. So in theory, because of how much money the Democrats are spending to make this a little bit in play, the Will County Democrats are an effective force, so you can't take them for granted. But still, floor R plus, R+3.
So the floor isn't even.
No. Yep. There is no scenario where Billy Morgan wins, guys. I'm sorry. Billy, you're probably watching this. I'm sorry. You are not going to win. Jackie Haas is going to win. The best you can do is just give the House Republicans a heart attack on election night.
All right, so our floor is +3. What do you think on this race? Do you have thoughts on it?
I mean, I agree with Chris. I think that this one is kind of a lost cause for the Democrats, especially I think like with Jackie, with her, she was worked in, she was like a social worker prior to this. She has a very firm grasp on the constituent services aspect, which goes a long way in these House districts. So I think she's fine.
What's your ceiling on this race? Or do you want me to set the ceiling?
You can set it.
See, look at it. We got Michael, the bastion of confidence over here, making me do the hard work. Listen, Jackie Haas won this last time by 17. It's an R+7 district. Haas always overperforms. Trump won it by 1. We're talking about maybe winning these districts where Trump lost by 3, 5, 7, even more. Trump won this district by 1 point. I think the ceiling in this race is above 10 points. I think Haas could win this thing by 13, 14, and I would not be shocked. So let's set the ceiling at +14, the floor at +1. What do you guys think?
No. +3.
You got to do at least 3.
+3 for the floor,
All right,
Collin.
+3 for the floor. Okay. And the ceiling, you guys are okay at 14?
Yeah, 14. Yeah, I don't necessarily think that's going to happen, maybe just because of the investment by the Democrats, but it's definitely possible. Yes.
All right. So we're saying this thing's pretty rock solid. All right, let's keep moving. Senate District. The only Senate District we're talking about today, because it's the only one that even might be slightly in play, Senate District 40. This is Patrick Joyce, currently holds the seat. Philip Nagel is running as the Republican. Republicans put a lot of money and investment into this race, but in the last few weeks, they have pulled out of the race. That should kind of tell you where this thing's going to land, but we're going to talk about it because it is one of the top 17 races. Michael, kick us off.
I think that just tells it all, that the Senate Republicans have kind of pulled back on this one a little bit, so I think that, we're unfortunately not going to pick up a Senate seat this cycle.
So the ceiling you would have be below break even. That's just, it's not happening. We're not winning it. There's no scenario where Republicans pick it up.
Yeah, I think ceiling probably D+3. I mean, they have had some decent hits on Joyce, and some of the ads were high quality, and obviously people saw those for a significant amount of time. So there may be some holdover on that when people actually go to vote, but it's not going to be enough to eke out a victory.
What do you think?
Look, Patrick Joyce, for a Democratic state senator, he fits his district pretty well. The Democrats are hammering that district. They took the race seriously, and the Republicans did for a long time, too. And I don't think they're 100% of the race. I think they're doing some small things for Nagel still. I don't think they're 100% out, but it's not like it was like a month ago where they were huge TV buys, mail buys, etc. So, floor here. Trump is going to do better in this district. This is a trending Republican district, working class areas of Will, Kankakee, and Cook County. Still, floor, you put it at probably 10.
Okay. To your point, Trump only lost it by 6 last time. The underlying numbers is it's only a D+1. So I get why Republicans were looking at the race, but Joyce does overperform in that district. He overperformed the top of the ticket by 5 last time, winning by 11. So what did you say the floor was?
10. You can make it 9 if you want to.
I think 10's fair. And you said the ceiling was more like D3. So I'll say -3 to -10 on that race.
But I will say, just to cut Collin off here, because I know he was about to say something, and I saw that coming. I do think Nagel lost by more than 10 in 2022. There is no scenario, I think, where he does the same or does worse in this district because of that investment and because of Trump being on the ticket, being actually helping us a little bit here. But still, like that 10 is like if Joyce's overperformances are still intact, and he really is that popular.
Okay. Let's go to our only congressional race that we're going to talk about, aisle 17. Nationally, they call this, likely Dem, and some say lean, but I think it's pretty much everyone saying likely Dem here. Eric Sorensen is the incumbent. Republicans have Joe McGraw as their candidate trying to pick up the seat. I think you're due to start us, right? Go ahead.
Sure, I can.
Or was it you? No, you were due. Go ahead.
Right. Okay, so Joe
Got
McGraw.
a lot to do here as moderator.
Joe McGraw, I mean, this is really the only congressional pickup opportunity in the state of Illinois for Republicans. It does look like the NRCC is coming in here at the last minute, and you should see, which is something they do for a lot of races for whatever reason, but you should see, Joe McGraw, he's not a bad candidate. They're running an okay race. Is it the best race? No, but the problem is, in this year, you probably need the best year to pull off the best race to take off Sorensen. I would say floor-wise, you're probably looking at D6 for a floor, maybe D7, just because he is an incumbent. They haven't ran the absolute best campaign, not the worst campaign either, just kind of an average campaign on the Joe McGraw side. Another race we'll look towards in 2026. You would have needed a phenomenal campaign. Could have been done, but I don't think they're at the point right now.
Okay. What do you think?
I think that's fair. I think that, Sorensen doesn't really fit the district if you look at, the issues that he's talking about and the, like his kind of priorities. So I think that's a factor.
That's a working class district, and he's all in on the social issues, which play really well in the suburbs, but that is not a suburban district.
Yeah, no doubt. So I would say, on the ceiling side, probably R+1. I mean, I think that it's possible that we pull this off, but if we do, it's going to be incredibly tight.
Yeah, I mean, Trump lost that district by 8 last time. I think he'll do a little better this time. Sorensen won it by 4, so he did underperform the top of the ticket in that race last time. He's an incumbent. He's had some more time. So certainly I think the range here sounds good. So +1 to -7, did you say?
Yeah, 7 or 6, I think I said, yeah.
All right, let's say +1 to -7. In the aisle 17 race. I'd be surprised if we pull it off, but I do think Republicans are going to make it close enough of a race that we could look at it in 2026. All right, let's go to, we've got a couple county races, then we'll move on. We don't have to talk about these as much, but let's talk about the Lake County State's Attorney's race. This is a big race for Republicans, if only because this race is going to determine how everybody does on the rest of the ticket throughout Lake County, because everybody's looking at Eric Reinhardt as the incumbent. He is, with Kim Foxx stepping down, he's pretty much the last remaining sort of face of a lot of the like the Safety Act and some of those bills that were passed down in Springfield. As a result, he's been targeted for that. I know Michael has a lot he'd want to say about that if he had the time. But Reinhardt is definitely being targeted. The problem for Republicans is Lake County really, really, really doesn't like Trump. Maybe even more than DuPage County doesn't like Trump. So who's up to talk first? Is it you?
Yeah, it's me
Go
this
ahead.
time. I think that, best case scenario, this is like a break-even district. I mean, it's Lake County. What else do you have to say?
I mean, Trump lost that county by 24 points. That's our killer.
Yeah.
Even Vanna White thinks that's funny. What do you think about this race?
Bottoming out, I mean, you're right, minus 24 points. And Cole, she's a good candidate. If you could have put a candidate on paper to be a phenomenal candidate, I think it would have been Mary Cole for this race. Then they are going all in on against Eric Reinhardt in this race. But at the same time,
the Democrats are going all out to defend.
Right. They're bringing
up there. Yeah.
They're bringing in Pritzker. They're doing stuff with Schneider. So the Democrats also recognize that Reinhardt isn't the best candidate. Still, it's Lake County. You want me to talk about floor? You're talking 12, honestly, for floor of this race. Will it be that? Probably not. But if everything goes wrong for Republicans in Lake County, you're probably looking at 12.
All right, so you've got minus what
I said even.
Even? So even to 12? I can live in that range. Let's go even to minus 12. So could happen. Going to be really difficult. Again, Trump's a killer there. But it was a race that Republicans were very, very excited about at the beginning of the year. And the campaign itself has been decent. There's been some good, some bad, as always happens with county races. But definitely I think Republicans were hoping for a heck of a lot more in that race. DuPage County Auditor. Chris, we're going to let you start here because you always like making enemies in DuPage County. This is Bob Grogan running to retake his seat. He lost it last time by a handful of votes. I don't remember, but it was incredibly close. He's running again to retake that seat. Haven't heard a lot about the race, to be honest. It's kind of been under the radar. Curious what you're thinking.
This was a race that was kind of hyped up after that like months-long recount they had going in DuPage County after the auditor's election 4 years ago. But not a lot of headwinds going on. They haven't ran like a really great campaign or really much of a campaign at all from what I'm seeing. Doesn't mean I might be missing something, but I thought the DuPage County Republicans might really hammer home to get the auditor seat after just barely losing it last time. It's DuPage County. You know me. I don't know what type of Republican it takes. For whatever reason, like the only Republicans who win in DuPage County for whatever reason are just like the random 17-year incumbents that are still there for some reason. Even the Democrats, they like run a candidate. Sometimes they don't really do anything for them. That's really the only way you win a race as a Republican in DuPage County these days. Bottoming out, Grogan was a former incumbent there, so that's going to matter. Trump on the ticket. DuPage County loves their Democrats nowadays. Probably are a D+8 for like bottoming out in this district. That's like everything going wrong in DuPage County, bottoming it out at -8.
I'd maybe bump that up to 6 just because he is an incumbent. He only lost by 66 votes. So I'd say -6. Would you be okay with that?
I'd be okay with -6.
All right.
But still, it's DuPage County, Colin. I'm not willing to go any closer.
All right, fair. What do you think?
I mean, with it being as close, it was significantly close last time, and I think Trump will do slightly better in DuPage County this time. I mean, even 2-3 point improvement could pay dividends in a race like this.
I mean, I see it. I had it in my notes. 66 votes is what he lost by last time. I mean, so I think the ceiling here has got to be above break even.
Yeah.
What do you think? 2, 3, 2?
2. I would say 2. I mean, I think we've talked about it. I mean, there's been a lot of incompetence from these DuPage County Democrats that did get elected, 2 years ago, 4 years ago. It's made a lot of headlines. So I think there may be a little bit of an appetite for, this person may be a Republican and I live in DuPage County, but it would be nice to have some competence for once.
Well, and you stole my point, and that's the problem with going last is sometimes you guys make good points and I lose my points. I think locally, the voters are starting to see that county government run by Democrats in DuPage County is not being run well. I've got Grogan as winning this race. He's not one of my picks, which is why I'm saying it now, but I think Grogan pulls this off by a point or two. So we'll put the ceiling at +2, the floor at, what would we say,
Yeah, we said 6.
-6. So +2 to -6 for that race.
You got to be careful when you go when these people go to vote and they say, "Oh, blue, no matter who." It's like, well, you might want to look into this candidate a little bit before you push that button.
Yeah, I mean, we got to talk about Kesmerick and some of the problems that are happening in DuPage County. We'll do that on an SFR after Election Day because we got to talk DuPage. It's been a cluster. All right, we're almost done here. Will County Clerk. I know Chris just went first, but it's his county, so you can start us off here on the Will County Clerk's race. Republicans are pretty excited about it. They've got a candidate, Annette Parker. They're trying to run there to take that seat up as a pickup. The incumbent is what? Michelle Stiff is the incumbent?
She's not the incumbent. So Lauren Staley Ferry was the incumbent, and she resigned to become the Joliet City Clerk. And they put Chuck Pelkey in there, who was her chief of staff. He's just filling out the job to make sure the clerk's office doesn't burn down between now and the election day, which it may burn down just because of everything that happens in Will County. For the record, Will County is not my county. I live in beautiful Cook County. I wish Will County was my county sometimes, but that's a story for another time. In any case, Annette Parker, a phenomenal candidate. She's the president of the Will County Forest Preserve. She's been on the county board for a number of years now. She's very, very well liked in her home county board district, which covers Lockport, Crest Hill, and parts of New Lenox. A really, really solid candidate. The Democrats also, recognizing their weakness in the district, they picked a really solid candidate, Michelle Stiff, who's a black woman trying to become the only black elected official countywide in Lake County. And Will County, they're putting a lot of money into Stiff because the Democrats are taking this race seriously. They haven't had a lot of time to run a campaign just because of when Lauren Staley Ferry resigned. You want me to give you a floor? Because not a lot of things are happening in Will County this cycle on the Republican Party side, which is probably a detriment to Annette's campaign, I'd put the floor probably at D plus 5 or 6 just because I think the DuPage County Democrats will probably have a good night. There'll be some close races. The Will County. See, Will County, man. I'm not there to cycle. You gotta get me out in Lake County, in Will County. But roll with it.
So -6, I think, is a good floor.
-6.
Do you have thoughts on this race or not? It's not your region. That's okay.
I'll give you a ceiling if you want.
Go
I'm
for
gonna do that too. Ceiling's probably R+1, R+2, because Annette is extremely popular and extremely well known in her district, so she will overperform the places that she currently represents. The people who know her love her, and I think she has enough name ID to where she could pull this race off if everything goes right.
Betting line in that race would be D4, looking at the underlying numbers. So I think a floor of -6 is good. I'd say +1 would be our ceiling there. So +1 to -6 for Annette Parker. Last one. We got to talk judge races. Nobody ever pays attention to judicial races. But at the beginning of this cycle, Republicans were really excited because the new 3rd District Appellate District, as everything had been redrawn and moved around, Republicans, there were 3 openings, and if we had won all 3, we could have taken a majority. Unfortunately, in that race, 2 candidates just really have not panned out on the Republican side, and no one thinks we can win those seats. So we're going to talk about just one of the openings. Kenton Scarron is the Republican candidate in the Lighton vacancy. John Anderson on the Democratic side, who isn't the candidate they wanted in that primary in the first place. Let's talk 3rd District Appellate, and again, it's not Michael's region, so I'll let Chris kick us off.
So this is the only race in play here. There was some hype over the candidates that the Republicans brought into the race. It doesn't seem like they really got the help they deserve or really had the vigor to actually run a full campaign here. I do think at least one of them should consider running for judge in the future if he gets the help he needs.
Costello?
Right? I think Costello is a great candidate on paper, and I hope he runs again, even if he's not successful here. Scarron has ran a full campaign. He has taken this race seriously from the beginning. And John Anderson, amongst the Democratic Party, isn't very well liked, and they are going negative on Anderson. They've been going negative on it for a couple months now. The interesting thing here is that this is a race where DuPage County is in it, so of course there's always a disadvantage for the Republicans in the seat. Personal PAC has come in here yet again talking about abortion, and DuPage County, as we know, loves their abortions. So that's going to be a negative factor, but Scarron has ran a very, very good campaign. You're going to floor here probably like 4, I'd say, is the floor in this race, with all things considered, with a ceiling of probably up to R4 even. Like, I think it's an even, there might be an 8-point gap here based on how things go out here.
Underlying numbers, that is an R1 district. So we should be winning that district. Obviously, in the Trump era, we're losing a lot of districts that we should be winning.
But there's parts of this district, it's interesting because there is the gaping hole of DuPage County that we have to consider here. But there's also LaSalle County, Will County, Grundy County, areas that are trending more Republican, so that's taken into consideration here too. And it's Kankakee County. These are areas that Mary Kay O'Brien did very well in because she used to represent some of these rural areas in 2022. So it's not going to be the same overperformance with the Democrats in those rural areas. Maybe Anderson overperforms a little bit in Will because that's where he's from. He's got some support amongst the legal community there. But still, I don't think the Republicans can win this by a pretty decent margin if all things go right.
And it's Scarron, not Scarron, so I've been saying that wrong.
Scarron.
It's my accent.
One of us is saying it wrong, who knows. But I've got Republicans winning that seat. I think we're going to pull it off. So I think your range is good. I think it ends up more in the +2 range at the end of the day. But
you want a ceiling. Ceiling doesn't mean where it's going to end up.
I know, I get it. +4 to -4. That's what we're going to put in this district.
And I think that from what I've seen, is it Scarron or Scarron?
Who knows? Just carry on.
Whatever however you pronounce it. I've been impressed with the campaign that he's run from what I've seen, on Facebook and LinkedIn and some of these places that they've really been getting their message out. They've had some good hits on John Anderson. Mm-hmm. He's not a particularly good candidate for the Democrats. I saw one just recently where he's basically been pulled over or gotten tickets basically in every county in this district. It's insane.
Which is interesting because he beat the guy he beat in the primary. He beat because he was tying that guy to his DUI. So it's funny how he accuses this guy of having a DUI, beats him because of it, and then turns around and oh God, this guy's got a rap sheet a mile long. So it's just funny.
I think the negative on this, I think if we lose this one, it's going to be in part because of this underperformance of the other 2 candidates.
Yeah. It's certainly going to hurt.
I think that hurts.
If we had 3 solid candidates who all running really good campaigns, I'd feel even more confident about this race. So.
But I could see a world where, if Scarron overperforms and gets to that R+3, R+4, somewhere in that range, he may have coattails to pull those other two across the finish line.
They're not winning. Helen and Costello, no way are they pulling it off.
You think people will vote like Republican for one and then Democrat for the other two?
Yeah,
I mean,
happens all the time, Butler.
They're voting for the name they know at that point.
Sure.
So
yeah, that's
all right.
fair.
Those are our ranges. That's our analysis of the 17 districts. We've got it all on the board. We'll snap a photo of this and post and bring it up so you can see it more closely, since you're not going to be able to see it from here. So you'll see this when you're watching the video. Now we're going to get to the fun. We've only got a little bit of time left. We're going to get to the fun part of this. I'm looking at our producer, making sure we're good on like battery and everything else. He's giving me a thumbs up. We're good. All right. So let's go into our picks. This isn't going to take as long. We're going to make sure everything's set on this side. All of us. Here's what we're going to do. We're each going to have 3 locks. 3 districts that we think this is guaranteed what's going to happen. A Republican's going to win, a Democrat's going to win. We're each going to make 3 picks on locks. Then we're also each going to pick a district that we think we're going to overperform expectations in. And we're going to each pick a district that we think we're going to underperform expectations in. You guys ready to go?
I just need to pull up my picks again, Collin, because I've already forgotten them.
All right, I'm looking at our boss here, Vanna White, our producer. Who gets to go first on this? How does this work? Michael gets to go first? All right, we're going to go from you left to right. So, Michael, your first pick.
So are we starting
with our
locks? Okay, my first lock, let's go with Brandun Schweizer.
Okay.
And I think, like I had talked about earlier, they're running a great campaign. The early vote numbers are looking very strong with that 40.2%, modeled Republicans, which is a great place to be because you're going into election day with, probably a 10, 15 point deficit, where in a lot of these other races we're going in with a larger deficit.
Okay. You got a lock for Schweizer. I've got my first lock. It's Jackie Haas. Jackie Haas is going to pull this off. I've been annoyed that we're wasting so much time, frankly, talking about House District 79. It was never in play. It's not in play. Jackie Haas, I think she wins. I'll even be even more bold here. I think she wins by 10. I think it's not even close. It's going to be nowhere near a close race for Democrats on election night. What do you got?
I got Jackie Williamson beating Amy Grant. This is my lock of the century, guys. Put the house on it. I don't care what people say about Wheaton. It is not the town it was 10, 20 years ago. Wheaton is a gentrifying town of the upper middle class, and they love their abortions, and they love their Democrats. They are voting Jackie Williamson into the House this cycle.
See, I disagree with you on that one.
You're going to be wrong.
All right, we'll see. Let's go to our next lock picks. Michael, you're up next.
Yeah, I was going to go with Kevin Schmidt on this one. Okay. I think that, we've seen an improvement on the early vote numbers compared to the previous 2 cycles. You've got groups like AFP, Local 150, that have been putting a lot of money and time and energy into this race. And if you look at the early turnout for African Americans, it's basically the same as what it was last cycle. And the Democrats acted like, oh, that's why we lost. Well, they're not showing up this time either. Maybe they're not even there. Who knows? But I think he's going to win.
And I said it earlier in the video. I think it's going to be a long, drawn-out vote process. But I think Schmidt ends up on the good side of that. So we'll see. All right, my next lock. Michael already stole it. I'm going to go a little bold here. I think Schweizer is going to win as well. I got a lot of friends who are telling me I'm crazy, that's one of the biggest flips that just like Amy Grant, Schweizer is done. It's over. I disagree. I'm putting him up as one of my locks. I think he pulls this thing off, and I don't think it's a razor-thin margin either. I think he pulls it off by a couple points. I've got it at 3. We'll see what happens at Election Day, but I'm with you on Schweizer. We tried to not have overlap, but I felt so strongly about this one I had to change the rules so that I could pick him too. And hey, it's my podcast. I can make up whatever dang rules I want. What's your next pick?
My next pick is Eric Sorensen over Joe McGraw. Again, I'm not really feeling happy about this one.
You're just stepping out on a limb here, aren't you? It's a tough pick.
It's a tough pick, but I do.
I'm making fun of you. I'm lying.
Oh, I'm sorry. In any case, I'm not happy about making this pick, but it is happening. Sorensen's going to win. We'll try again in 2026.
All right, last one, your last hold or your last lock. What do you got?
I disagree with Chris on this one from a second ago. I had Amy Grant. I think she's going to pull it off. She's going to be fine.
Wow.
And
I wasn't confident enough to make her one of my locks. That's pretty bold. You think it's a lock. This thing's happening.
I think she's got it in her. She's like, I'm going to shock the world. She does it every time. So Amy, please shock the world again.
Just so that Michael doesn't look bad?
That's right.
All right, I did not have a decision on my last lock, and even at this moment, I'm having to go back and forth trying to decide what my last lock is going to be. So my producer's over there holding a bunch of, hold them up for me so I can look at them, which one I'm going with. All right, let's take House District 91. That's my lock. I've picked a lot of Republicans, and I got to be fair here. I don't think Republicans are going to have a super awesome election on November 5th. So I got to put a Democrat up here. 91 was a waste of time, a waste of money. We were never going to pick that one up. I think it's unlocked that Sharon Chung is going to win it. I don't think she's going to win it by as much, maybe as some people think, but I don't think it's also going to be very close. I think 6, 7 in that range it would be reasonable, maybe even 8 that she wins by. She only won by 4.5 last time, so I am being a little bold in picking this. I hate picking against Republicans, but I don't know what we were doing in that race.
Speaking of wastes of money, we're going to be talking about Amy Murray Briel over Liz Bishop here. Again, I'm not necessarily 100% against the idea of playing in this district. I'm against the idea of playing in this district to the tune of how much money they put into it. That's what makes me upset here. This is a race where I think you throw like 50 grand in it, you do some stuff locally, encourage the Republican organizations, and you turn around in 2026 or 2028 and do something there. Liz Bishop, I'm sorry, not going to win.
All right, we doing over or under next? Over? All right. Have to keep looking for instructions from our producer. All right, what's your over pick?
My over pick is Jake Keeven, which probably isn't going to be a surprise to a lot of people, but I think they've run a really good race. I think there's been a lot of enthusiasm behind his candidacy, and that enthusiasm has increased as we've gotten closer. Like we talked about earlier, I think Katie's just run a poor campaign. She took it for granted. She thought, I'm not even going to have an opponent. Why do I need to do anything?
So you're thinking over and
Here
win.
we are, over and win.
All right, I like it. She's taking the over and the win, so I don't think you're probably big into sports betting or just betting in general, but if you were, this would be a double down for some serious cash.
That's right.
My over, since Chris just talked about 76, I got to talk about 76. That's my over, actually, is 76. Here's the thing. It's my over, not my win. We're not winning that district. I also don't disagree that we shouldn't have spent as much money as we did, but because we spent as much money as we did, and because the candidate is a good candidate and the team has worked their butts off, we're going to lose it, I think. I'll admit that, but I think we're going to overperform. Remember, Yednak was holding that district by 15. I think if we're able to come within 5-6 points, which is the range of where I think we're going to come in, that is an overperformance, and I'm going to take that. So credit Liz Bishop and her team for running a great race. We're going to overperform. I'm not bold enough to do a double like Michael here and say we're actually going to win it, but I do want to credit the team. They are going to overperform here, and kudos to them.
For my next pick, I have a request. Plan trusters, lend me your ears. Plan trusters, can you hear me? My pick for overperformance is the one and only Marty McLaughlin, baby. Marty McLaughlin will overperform all expectations. I don't care what anybody's saying. Marty McLaughlin is going into this race, and I believe, in fact, he could win this race. I don't care what the press is saying. I don't care how many TV ads the House Dems put up about abortion. The fact of the matter is that Marty McLaughlin is loved by the people, and the people love Marty McLaughlin, and Marty McLaughlin loves the people back. And Marty McLaughlin will be the overperformance. He could win. Trust the plan. Patriots are in control in House District 52.
That was such a powerful and then just sort of a...
I forgot what district number it was.
What number is it?
This is also another district, by the way, that I think is going to go for days and days and days or weeks after Election Day. So the fact that Chris felt so strongly about this, Marty and your team, when you need people the next morning, Wednesday morning, to be at the clerk's office counting votes,
Don't call me.
make sure you call Chris because he needs his win.
I'm not going to Cicero. I'm not doing it. I'm not happening.
He needs this win. All right, our last picks are underperformance. Michael, what do you think?
Which one were you going to make me go with, Lane? Because I think there was some... all right, that works. Yeah. I had Marty McLaughlin as an underperformer. But I do think I think he will win, but I think that it's going to be, like you said, it's going to go on for days and days.
So you think he pulls it off, but he underperforms?
Yeah.
Well, fancy you say that, because making my underperformance pick, I also have Marty McLaughlin, so we did not time this or plan this. Here's the deal. Again, I think Marty pulls it off. I think it's by a hair. I do think Marty pulls it off, but everyone needs to recognize that district. Trump does not kill us totally in that district like he does in some others. It's an R+ district, 11 district locally. We should have never had to have spent money in this district. We should have never had to focus on it this much.
Don't need it. We're winning anyway, Collin. Don't need it.
I talked about this months ago, that we needed to put this district on lock, because if we're wasting time and energy on this district, it's pulling us away from other districts, and that's where we're at. So, Marty, I love you. I think you squeaked this one out, but it never should have been that close, and so that's why it's my under for my pick.
We don't need money. We just need vibes over here in House District 52, man.
What's your under?
You're over to me now. My underperformance is DuPage County, Bob Grogan. DuPage County Republicans can have nothing good. You are underperform expectations. I'm sorry if Bob Grogan is watching this. I'm not blaming you entirely. I think I'm just blaming the gaping chasm of the county you happen to live in. My apologies.
He can't go through one recording without ticking off everybody in DuPage County, so I guess well done.
Win some races and I'll stop.
All right, so that's mean and harsh, but kind of true.
Fair.
Yes, all right. Yeah, you win on that one. All right, last thing we're doing here is surprise picks, right? So outside the top 17, we're each going to pick a race, and we say, hey, here's a surprise nobody's talking about that everybody should be talking about. Go ahead.
I had as my surprise pick Joshua Lloyd in the 13th Congressional District. I think he's going to exceed expectations. I think Nikki Budzinski still wins. But based on some of the early vote and vote by mail numbers that I've seen, Republicans are showing up, and I think that's credit to a lot of these local organizations, some of the races that they're running. But I think he's gonna do better than we expect.
Okay. Again, because it's my podcast, I get to make the rules. So I'm going to give you 3, but only one will officially make it on the board. I think IL10, Karras versus Schneider, is going to be a little bit of a surprise. Remember, Trump lost that district by 26. Schneider won it by 26. We're not winning this district. But the fact that we finally have a credible candidate in that district for the first time in a long time. Remember, Schneider won it by 26 because he was up against literally the worst performing Republican candidate in the entire state of Illinois. So I think nobody's talking about the district, but Karras is going to at least make it where it's kind of a race. Again, not going to win it. He's probably going to lose by like 10 to 15 point range, but Schneider won it by 26. The fact that we're going to get to within 10 to 15 points, I said 10 to 20, I meant 10 to 15, that is a surprise and an overperformance, and kudos to the Karras team. If we can start to nominate more good candidates, we're going to start to see more overperformances like this. Another surprise is going to be House District 66. This is Suzanne Ness, Lori Parman. Republicans did not get a good candidate in this race, which is why it's just never been in play, which is why it's not in the top 17. But in that district, it's not as Democrat as everybody is saying. And so I think we're going to be talking about 66 as a wasted opportunity. Had we recruited a better candidate, had we put more into it, I think it would have been one of these 17 that we were talking about going into Election Day. Could we have won it? I don't know. But we absolutely should at least be talking about it. And so I think for that reason, this is going to be one of those surprising districts. But officially on the board, as Abby gets it, I'll puff my cigar. Because it's a nice cigar, I don't want to waste it. My surprise is House District 81. Aaron Porter against Anstava Murray. I think here's the problem for that district. Everybody thinks that Downers Grove is this deep blue area that will never, ever vote Republican. But people got to realize it's the Trump effect. In that district, it's only D+4 if you take away the Trump effect. The Trump effect is awful. He loses that district by 23 last time. So I'm not saying we're going to win this district or even come super close. But I think we've made a mistake by thinking that Downers is deep blue. It's just anti-Trump. It's not deep blue. And so my surprise is that Aaron Porter is going to come closer than people expect. And maybe it will get us to start to realize that in some of these districts, it's not that they're deep blue. It's just that they don't like Trump. And as we move beyond the Trump factor in some of these elections, we got to start to look at where can we play. And I think Anstava Murray has done some really ridiculously crazy things like we've talked about. And I think 81 is something we can talk about in 2, 4, 6 years. And I think we're going to pick it up by the end of the decade. So that's my surprise.
I agreed with this one, and I had it on my list, but Lane wouldn't let me put it up, so you got it.
All right. So see, look, they're backing up the boss. I like it.
And my final surprise pick is Jim Martyr in Congressional District 14. I think Jim's a great guy. He's ran for a number of offices in the past, was never able to get it past the primary, finally got past the primary this time. And the local Republican organizations are going all out for him. They love Jim Martyr. They're giving him the best race they possibly can. I don't know if Jim's going to pull this off, but I do think last time around, the Republicans in this district really didn't do anything after the primary because they kind of caught the Richard Irvin loss, so we're all screwed across the board bug. That's not the case this year. Republicans are doing a lot for Jim Martyr. Jim Martyr's running a pretty decent campaign. Will he win? I don't know, but I do think he's going to get closer than we did in 2022, and I think it's good for the party.
And you know what? Just as guys who kind of deserve a win, not a win-win, but deserve something. The dude's been working his butt off for years, not just for running for office, but also for the party. So if you're right, I'd love that. Jim Martyr deserves just a little bit of a bump. Again, not going to win that district, but we've got some good people like Jim Martyr, Jerry Evans, and others who I'd love it if they didn't have an awful election night. So I like that. All right, we're going to close this down. Thank you to Michael and to Chris for coming out there with their picks. We're putting it on record. That way nobody can say on election night that we didn't go out and say what we thought was going to happen. Please make sure you stick with us if you're watching this maybe for the first time. As I said, we've got our regular smoke-filled rooms. I'm usually the only one bringing the smoke, to the chagrin of some people in the room, but thank you guys for putting up with it. But we're here every week talking politics from a center-right perspective. So make sure you subscribe, like the video, right? I'm like a podcaster. Like and subscribe, blah, blah, blah. But stick with us. We've got another episode later this week that's going to talk about what's going to happen. We're going to do a recap episode right after Election Day. We got a lot coming your way, so stick around with us. In the meantime, we'll catch you next time in our smoke-filled room.